Mamar Vehu Oimeid in the Mamar of Pashas Vayera, Mamar Vehu Oimeid, and we are on page Lamed. We are in the middle of learning about the process, the spiritual dynamic of a korban, of a sacrificial offering. And the Rebbe explained that it's the idea of birur, refinement, fixing, repairing the sparks, so to speak, of energy, of divine energy that fell into the various realms through this process known as Shviras, this phenomenon known as Shviras HaKelim, the breaking up of the vessels of Tohu, of the world of chaos, where the divine energies were too powerful for the Kelim, the divine receptors, to contain. And in each world, a certain amount of, or a certain quality and amount of these fragments from this breaking up of the vessels fell. The more refined fell into Atzilus, the less refined into Bria, and so on and so forth until Asiya. And in Atzilus, Hashem, as it were, repaired all of the fragments. That's why it's called Elam Atikun, the repaired world. And in all the other following worlds, some of them were repaired and some of them were not. And it was left for us, for man, to repair the fragments in Elam Asiya in this world, and through that process, it has a knock-on effect on the fragments in all the other worlds. And that's the idea of a korban. That we bring an animal, we turn it into something holy, something godly, through the process of bringing the korban, that repairs the fragments in Olam Asiyah, and then it goes up to Yetzirah, and those fragments are repaired, and then into Bria, all the way to Malchus of Atzilus. And although there is already, and anyway, this is what the Rebbe explained in terms of the process of bringing the korban.
How are they repaired?
How are they repaired? Where?
You said they are repaired.
The action of man in this world.
But in what you now got these bits of keli,
No,
with containing some of that original light,
correct,
which was there originally.
Let's put it this way.
Is the extraction of that light?
It is returning those fragments to their source. In other words, they fell into Klippa, we extract them from Klippa, and we bring them back into the fold of Kedusha. Their
source was such that they could not exist.
1 second. They couldn't exist in the course of Bria as creation took place. But through the process of Avodas Hashem, that's what we do. They could contain the Kedusha. That is the idea of Avodas HaBirurim. That's the whole process.
Those little fragments can now reveal the light that's within them, or I don't understand.
Yeah. What's the idea of mitzvahs?
Well, isn't that just putting the thing back into one piece again?
In a sense, yes.
A fragment on its own is nothing. You want to make the jigsaw puzzle.
Let's put it this way: it's extracting the nitzuts, extracting the divine energy that's within that fragment, as it were, and returning it to the fold of Kedusha, making it a productive fragment, a productive energy rather than a destructive energy. What's the idea of a mitzvah? What's the idea of fulfilling Torah mitzvahs in this world? What do we draw down? To use the vernacular of Chassidus, what do we draw down into this world? Atzmus, the very essence of Hashem. How is that possible? It's not containable, but that is the idea of mitzvahs. Mitzvahs is a tool through which we can achieve the impossible. It's otherwise impossible. In other words, in terms of the normal state of Bria, these things are not possible. But through this tool known as mitzvahs, Torah and mitzvahs.
Hang on, so the regulating light, or the regulating force is of no interest to us. We want to extract the light.
We we extract it into the normal order of things. Without Avodas Hashem, whether it's Karbonis, mitzvahs, and so on and so forth, each aspect of Avodas Hashem referring to another birur, another repair, another refinement, right? We would not be able to access that which is beyond our normal frame of reality. So you need a normal frame of reality to exist, and within that normal frame of reality, you introduce something which is extraordinary, something which is beyond. That's the whole idea of Avodas Hashem. So it becomes now a metzius, a being that can handle all these extraordinary things. That's what Torah mitzvahs accomplishes. Without Torah mitzvahs, for example, the Ovis, they could not transform. They could not they couldn't introduce anything new. It was fixed. This is how Bria is. That's it. This is how Seder Shtalshalos is. That's it. In Torah and mitzvahs, through Avodas Hashem, different aspects addressing different elements, we can introduce the otherwise extraordinary into the ordinary, as it were. So, where does this process end up until? Of ascent, the berurim, as it were, these repairs. It ends up in Malchus Datzilis. Right? We bring the carbon down here in this world. The physical animal it becomes consumed, as it were, taken into, from Elam Asiyah into Elam HaYetzirah, the world of formation. Through that birur that takes place in the world of formation, it goes up to Elam HaBriyah, and through the refinement that takes place in Elam HaBriyah, which is the idea of the world of creation, which is the idea of the Arya, the Ochel Korban, and the lion that we mentioned earlier, that consumes the Korban, it rises up to Malchus of Atzilus. Right? As mentioned before, Malchus of Atzilus, as it becomes a source, Malchus from the last of the divine attributes in the realm of Atzilus, of emanation, as it becomes a source for Bria, for Bia, for the worlds that follow it, but not beyond that. So that is all the initiative of man. That's our initiative. Otherwise known in Kabbalistic terminology, Ha'alos Man, the lifting of the female waters. It says, in other words, it is the initiative, us being the female, and that which is above being the male. In this sense, Malchus, the Halos Man can reach, the initiative from below can reach up until the source of the one from below, which would be what? Malchus of Atzilus. But that triggers a reaction from the male, from the one above, which is called Hamshachas Mad, drawing down the efflux, as it were, of male waters. Who is the male in this sense? It would be Zoh, the six midas of the six divine attributes, emotional divine attributes of Atzilus, which would be mind churim. So we do what we can, and we go all the way up until Malchus of Atzilus, through bringing the karma. That triggers a reaction. That's where we're up to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines from the end of chapter 3. The line starts Sheba Elam. We're up to the comma where it says Validei Habirur. Let me just finish these few lines. Validei Habirur Sheba Elam Habiriyah, through the refinement of the repair that takes place in the world of creation, Ari Dachal Kurban, in the line that consumes the Korban, the offering, this causes Malchus to rise up to Atzilus, to the world of emanation. They halos manda Malchus, and through the rising up of Malchus, in other words, through the initiative, through the triggering of Malchus, this in turn causes a drawing down from the male waters of Zoh, of Zeir Ampin, the small face, as it were, meaning the six midas of the six divine emotional attributes of Atzilus. It triggers a reaction. What does that mean? It triggers a reaction. There is an emanation of energy from the Zeir Ampin, from the six midas to Malchus. How does that how is that organized? Page Lamed. How is that organized in terms of the bringing of the consumptions? Right. We spoke about the mizbeach consuming, the human consumption. So we explained that Achilas Mizbeach, the altar that stood in the courtyard of the Mishkan, or in the Beis HaMikdash, the temple, is Malchus of Atzilus, as it becomes a source for Biyah. You remember, Kodesh HaKadoshim are the realms beyond Atzilus. That's the Holy of Holies. The Holy, in other words, the main chamber of the Beis HaMikdash is Atzilus, corresponds to the realm of emanation, and the courtyard corresponds to Biyah, Bri, Yitzir, and Asiyah. The Mizbeach, the altar that stood in the courtyard, represents Malchus of Atzilus as it becomes a source for Biyah, right? So what do we do in the physical sense? We bring the korban onto the altar. What does that mean? We bring the korban onto the altar all the way, in other words, the korban goes up all the way till Malchus of Atzilus. What is that called? That's called Achilas Mizbeach, the consumption of the Mizbeach. V'lo Achilas Odom, and not the consumption of man. What's Odom we just mentioned in this context? Odom Abchinas Zo. Odom is the aspect of Zeir Ampin, the 6 midas of Atzilus. And the ascent which is accomplished, which is achieved through bringing the sacrificial offering, Hirak, B'Bchinas HaMalchus. We can only through our initiative go up until where? Raise things up until where? Until the aspect of Malchus of Atzilus, the last of the 10 divine attributes of Atzilus. That's why it's referred to as the consumption of the altar. Hainu, in other words, in Kabbalistic terminology, ho'achila de b'chinas Malchus. The consumption by Malchus. But we just finished saying that there's a reaction from Zoh, right? So why isn't that included? And although through the bringing the sacrificial offerings, Malchus receives from Zoh, right? We just said that our action causes a reaction. Our initiative, which goes all the way to Malchus, causes a reaction from Zoh, from the 6 divine emotional midas. So therefore, we would have thought that that should be what? Achilas Odom, man's consumption. Nevertheless, this is not referred to as the consumption of man. Why? What does consumption mean in a simple sense? You eat, you take it into yourself, and you gain energy from it. Right? That's not what happens over here. What happens is Zoh reacts and gives energy to whom? To Malchus. When we bring the korban, what happens? We cause these birurim, these energies that we extract from the fragments or from the animal, to become repaired in Asiyah, meaning to say to add to the environment of Asiyah, and in turn Yitzirah, and in turn Bria, all the way until Malchus of Atzilus, which causes a reaction from Zoh. So Zoh is not included in the process. The reaction from Zoh of Atzilus is not the idea of man's consumption. Why? Because the idea of the consumption of man means that through eating, in the physical sense, there's an added energy into the person that's consuming the food that they're eating. And in brackets, but through the karbonis, there is no additional efflux. In other words, the Rebbe translates it, there's no additional energy that comes about in Zoh through our korban. But rather, our bringing the korban causes what? Malchus to receive additional energy from Zoh. So that's why this idea is called Achilas Mizbeach, the consumption of the altar, in Kabbalistic terminology, Malchus of Atzilus.
It's going upwards. Yeah.
Upwards, which causes a reaction from Zoh. Now, of course, in the next chapter, the Rebbe is going to ask the question that I mentioned a few shiurim ago, which the Rebbe started off with in chapter 2, that the secret of the korban goes all the way up to the secret of the Ein Sof, the infinite, which is way beyond Atzilus, it would seem. And over here we say that we only go up until where? Until Malchus triggering something from Zoh, which would seem not to be the Ein Sof that we're referring to. So where does that come into the frame? Sorry. Now let's get back to your question.
I still don't understand the subtleties of the fragment coming down. You know, the anthropomorphism which is associated with that. So you have the fragments down here. The light itself, within the fragment, what are we releasing? The light or the fragment? The whole idea is that the Kali's got the higher, is the higher level. I mean, if you go all the way back, it's all one anyway. The regulating force was that which was left in the regime originally. If we go all the way back, so that's even higher. So when the spark comes down and you break, and you have over here a fragment with the light, the fragment is from, so to speak, from a higher level.
I think that's
Because it's from the light that
that ties into the question is why can it only go up to Malchus Tzilis? Why not higher? Why is that the threshold that it stops at?
Well, that's another question. The threshold that it stops at, because that's the source of that's so to speak
That's the source when it
our
comes
most
down.
direct source.
Okay.
So we can't go.
So it
You know,
can't
that's
go
what
beyond.
we go up to. But the Rebbe says, of course, it does go beyond, because we say also the Kurban Oila, also the Yisaf. It goes up to the secret of the Yisaf, which the Rebbe is going to address soon. But that's another question. What Harris is asking is that in Shviras HaKelim, it would seem you have two aspects to the to the particles or the nitzutzes, the sparks that fell. You have the oir and you have the kli aspect, right? You have the energy, the giving force, and the withholding force. So what Harris is asking is two questions, I guess, what you're asking. What fell? When you say the sparks fell, what are these sparks? Is it oir? Is it the giving force, or is it the withholding force, or is it both? And when we do the process of birur, what are we doing? Are we putting the keli back together?
Disencumbering.
Or are we extracting? What exactly are we extracting?
Yeah, that's the point.
Yeah, that's what Harris is asking. Okay, so we'll have to designate a discussion to Shviras HaKelim and to this subject.
Because I understand it coming down. You have the fragments, obviously in Asiya, the fragment is more powerful. The restraining force is more powerful. That's why we don't see the spark.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, but that's something
then-
else.
but
That's
then-
something else. Over there, you're talking in terms of tikkun. What you're referring to now is in terms of tikkun, the normal order of things. The normal order of things, you have atzilus where the giving force is stronger, and it recedes as it goes down. Shviras HaKelim is the anomaly, as it were. Shviras HaKelim, I mean, the simple. The basic definition of Shviras HaKelim is, as the Alter Rebbe brings in Tanya, is that these fragments that fell into klipa. They fell very far. We have to extract them from klipa.
I thought Klipper is the restraining force at its most extreme revelation. That's why it's called Klipper, because it is
The shell.
the shell. It hides.
We learned about it, I think, in Mamar we were discussing Chatetzadas. What was the idea of klipa without sin? Then it morphed into something else. The shell will fall away. Anyway, we will designate, please God, a separate discussion on this.